the galaxy had a rule: never provoke the Vraxx dominion. But the Vraxx made one fatal mistake. They massacred a peaceful colony that had 400 humans living on it. And in that moment, the entire galaxy learned a terrifying truth. Humans don't forgive. The galaxy had always believed that humanity was a mistake. For thousands of cycles, the Galactic Archive described Earth as a marginal world: unstable climate, violent biosphere, tectonic chaos, predators that hunted for sport, diseases that mutated faster than medicine could cure them. To the civilized species of the Orion Arm, life was meant to be efficient, balanced, and calm. Evolution on most planets had selected for harmony. Earth had selected for survival. The first time humanity entered the wider galactic community, the reaction had been mixed with fascination and quiet unease. Humans were smaller than many species, weaker than some, slower than others. Their bodies were fragile compared to armored exoskeleton races or silicon-based entities. Their world had no natural energy shields, no protective atmospheric stabilizers, no evolutionary gifts of psychic communication or natural weaponry. Yet they had something far stranger. They endured a war that would wipe out half the population of another civilization barely slowed them. Diseases that mutated every season forced them to build entire sciences around adaptation. Their own planet tried to kill them constantly: earthquakes, storms, volcanic eruptions, predators, parasites, and, still, they survived. For centuries, the galaxy watched them with curiosity. Some species traded with them. Others kept their distance. The Galactic Council eventually granted humanity observer status, though many members privately believed humans would never become a major power. After all, the galaxy had real threats to worry about. The Vraxx Dominion was one of them. The Vraxx were ancient conquerors, a species born on a high-gravity world where survival meant crushing anything weaker. Their bodies were massive, plated with natural armor and reinforced bone structures. They possessed a ruthless culture built around domination and expansion. When they entered galactic space 500 years earlier, they had burned through 3 civilizations before anyone could stop them. Entire star systems fell to their fleets. Planets were stripped of resources, populations enslaved or exterminated. The Vraxx believed the universe belonged only to those strong enough to take it. For centuries, the Galactic Council maintained a fragile stalemate with them. Defensive alliances, buffer zones, and constant negotiations kept the Vraxx contained, but never defeated. Until the Massacre. It began in a small border system called Lorian. The system had no strategic value, no rare resources, no military significance. It was simply a peaceful colony world inhabited by several cooperative species, including a small human research outpost studying the planet's unusual ecosystems. There were no heavy defenses there, no war fleets, just scientists, farmers, and families. The Vraxx arrived without warning. Their ships emerged from warp like predators bursting from darkness. Within minutes, orbital defenses were shattered. Colony ships were torn apart before they could flee. The Vraxx did not come to conquer. Lorian, they came to demonstrate power. The massacre lasted 3 hours. Cities burned. Civilian transports were hunted through orbit like animals. Entire habitats were vented into vacuum. By the time the Vraxx fleet departed, more than 40 million beings were dead. Among them were 412 humans. Across the galaxy, news of the massacre spread like a shockwave. Most species responded with grief and political outrage. Emergency council meetings were called. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. The usual response: sanctions, diplomatic condemnations, military warnings. But on Earth, something else happened. At first, the reaction was quiet. The footage from Lorian reached human networks: burning cities, desperate evacuation attempts, alien civilians fleeing in terror, human researchers dying alongside their colleagues as Vraxx soldiers advanced through the colony. There were no speeches from Earth's leaders that day, no grand declarations, just silence. Then humanity began to prepare. Admiral Renata Alvarez stood on the command platform of the Terran fleet carrier Horizon and stared at the tactical display floating above the bridge. Hundreds of ships glowed across the holographic star map. Destroyers, cruisers, assault carriers, the largest mobilization in human history. Behind them, Earth rotated slowly in the observation window, blue oceans shining beneath scattered clouds. The Homeworld looked peaceful, but the fleet around it was not. "Final readiness report," Alvarez said calmly. An officer turned from the sensor console. "All task forces operational. Warp drives charged. Weapon systems green across the fleet." Another voice spoke from communications. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting confirmation of our intentions." Alvarez watched the star map, silently for a moment. Then she answered. "Transmit the statement." The message went out across every major network in the Orion Arm. It was simple. Humanity was declaring war on the Vraxx Dominion. The Galactic Council was stunned. For centuries, dozens of advanced civilizations had avoided open conflict with the Vraxx. Even powerful empires had hesitated to provoke them. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for barely 200 years. Their fleet, while impressive, was still smaller than the combined forces of several older species. From a purely strategic perspective, the declaration made no sense. Council diplomats demanded explanations. Earth gave only one response. The Vraxx had slaughtered civilians, they had murdered humans, and humanity did not forget. When the Terran fleet jumped into warp, it carried something the rest of the galaxy did not yet understand: human anger. The first battle occurred at the edge of Vraxx territory. The Dominion had not taken humanity seriously. Their intelligence reports described humans as adaptable but politically divided, technologically creative but inexperienced in large-scale galactic warfare. The Vraxx expected a symbolic strike, perhaps a raid. What they encountered instead was a storm. Terran warships emerged from warp in perfect formation around the Vraxx border station Karthus. Hundreds of vessels appeared simultaneously, their engines blazing with controlled fury. The Vraxx defense fleet reacted immediately. Heavy. Cruisers accelerated toward the human formation, plasma batteries charging. Fighter swarms launched from armored carriers. It should have been a straightforward battle. The Vraxx had larger ships, thicker armor, and more powerful weapons. Yet something about the Terran fleet was different. They didn't advance cautiously. Like most galactic navies, they charged. Human destroyers accelerated straight into the enemy formation, firing railguns that launched tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. The kinetic impact shattered Vraxx shielding with brutal efficiency. Cruisers followed behind them, unleashing coordinated missile volleys that curved through space like flocks of hunting birds. But the most terrifying ships were the assault carriers. Instead of staying behind the battle line like traditional carriers, Terran carriers drove directly into the fight. Their hangar bays erupted with waves of small attack craft, fighters piloted by humans whose only mission was to destroy the enemy, and if necessary, die doing it. Vraxx commanders quickly realized something disturbing. Human pilots did not retreat. When their ships were damaged, they fought harder. Several Terran fighters rammed directly into Vraxx cruisers when their weapons failed, detonating fusion cores that tore holes through armored hulls. Within 20 minutes, the border station Karthus was gone. So was the Vraxx defense fleet. The galaxy watched the battle recordings with disbelief. No species fought like that. Wars in the Orion Arm were usually careful, strategic affairs. Civilizations valued survival, stability, and long-term advantage. Humans seemed to value something else: revenge. The Terran fleet did not stop at the border. They pushed deeper into Vraxx territory. System after system fell. At first, the Dominion dismissed the losses as temporary setbacks. They had conquered dozens of civilizations before. Humans were simply another opponent to crush. But every battle produced the same disturbing pattern. Humans adapted. Vraxx energy weapons that once penetrated Terran shields suddenly became less effective after only a few engagements. Human engineers modified shield frequencies mid-campaign. Vraxx fighters that dominated early dogfights found themselves outmaneuvered weeks later when human pilots developed new combat tactics. Even their own captured technology began appearing. On Terran ships, humans studied everything. They learned faster than any species the Vraxx had ever encountered, and they never stopped advancing. But the true horror came during the Battle of Serath Prime. Serath was one of the Dominion's most heavily fortified systems. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like an iron cage, each armed with planet-cracking plasma cannons. The Vraxx High Command believed Serath would break the Terran offensive. Instead, it became the moment the galaxy realized just how dangerous humans truly were. The Terran fleet arrived in silence. Hundreds of ships dropped from warp beyond the outer defense perimeter. For several minutes, they simply held position, scanning the massive defensive network surrounding the planet. Vraxx commanders prepared for a conventional assault. What they got was something else entirely. Human ships began moving, not toward the planet, toward the star. At first, observers thought it was a mistake. Then the sensors detected something impossible. The Terran fleet had deployed enormous gravitational devices around the system's sun. Experimental technology, devices designed to manipulate stellar, mass, and magnetic fields. Within minutes, the star itself began to react. Solar flares erupted across its surface. Streams of superheated plasma lashed outward like cosmic whips, and the direction of those flares pointed directly toward Serath Prime. The Vraxx defense network had been designed to stop fleets, not a star. The first flare struck an orbital platform with the force of a small supernova. The station vaporized instantly. Then another followed, and another. Within an hour, the entire defense grid was gone. Terran ships moved in afterward to finish the battle. The planet fell within the day. Across the galaxy, military analysts watched the recordings and felt something close to fear. Humans had weaponized a star. No species had ever attempted anything that reckless or that devastating. But humanity was just getting started. Months passed. The war grew bloodier. Vraxx counterattacks destroyed several Terran colonies, and entire human fleets were lost in brutal engagements. But each loss only hardened humanity's resolve. Human factories expanded production beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Civilian industries converted to military manufacturing overnight. New ships rolled out of orbital yards faster than enemy forces could destroy them. More disturbing was the human attitude toward casualties. Other species withdrew after heavy losses. Humans escalated. The Dominion slowly realized they had made a terrible mistake. The massacre at Lorian had not frightened humanity. It had awakened them. By the third year of war, Terran forces were approaching the Vraxx home system. The high command of the Dominion gathered in their central war chamber beneath the surface of their homeworld. Massive holographic maps displayed the situation. System after system glowed red. Lost to Terran occupation. Vraxx warlord Karvex stared at the display with growing unease. "How many ships remain in the home defense fleet?" he demanded. An officer responded, 300 capital vessels. Additional reinforcements arriving. Karvex's mandibles clicked in irritation. Humans should not have reached this far. No species has ever fought like them, the officer admitted quietly. Karvex studied the approaching Terran fleet marker. "Then we will end them here." But when the Terran fleet finally arrived in the Vraxx home system, something strange happened. They did not attack. Hundreds of human ships simply stopped beyond the outer orbit of the system. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Then a transmission arrived. It was a single message sent directly to the Dominion's command network. A human face appeared on the screen, Admiral Renata Alvarez. Her expression was calm, almost cold. "You massacred civilians on Lorian," she said, her voice carried across the war chamber. "You slaughtered millions who had never raised a weapon. Against you." Karvex watched silently. "We are here to end the Dominion," Alvarez continued. "But humanity remembers something your species does not." She paused. "Mercy. A ripple of confusion spread through the Vraxx command staff. "Stand down your fleets," Alvarez said. "Dismantle your war industry. Release every enslaved civilization under your control." Her eyes hardened slightly. "And you will live." Karvik rose to his full height. "You threaten us with extinction," he growled. "No," Alvarez replied. "We are offering you survival." The warlord laughed harshly. "You expect the Dominion to surrender to a species that has existed for barely 2 centuries in galactic space?" Alvarez did not react. Instead, she issued a final statement. "You have 1 hour to decide." Then the transmission ended. Across the system, the Terran fleet remained perfectly still. Inside the Vraxx war chamber, the commanders erupted into furious debate. Some argued the humans were bluffing. Others warned that every previous Terran threat had been followed by something worse than expected. But Karvik's pride would not allow surrender. When the hour ended, the Dominion fleet launched. Thousands of Vraxx ships surged toward the Terran formation in a tidal wave of metal and fire. The largest battle in galactic history began. For 6 hours the system burned. Human and Vraxx fleets clashed in a storm of plasma, missiles, and shattered hulls. Entire squadrons vanished in nuclear detonations. Fighters screamed through debris fields filled with the wreckage of capital ships. The battle was brutal, even by human standards. Yet slowly, the Dominion fleet began to break. Human tactics evolved mid-fight. Coordinated swarms isolated larger Vraxx vessels before destroying them piece by piece. Terran ships sacrificed themselves to create openings for devastating counterattacks. By the 8th hour, the Dominion fleet was collapsing. The surviving Vraxx ships attempted to retreat toward the planet. They never made it. The Terran fleet surrounded the homeworld in complete silence. Billions of Vraxx waited below, expecting annihilation. Instead, another transmission arrived. Admiral Alvarez appeared again. "The war is over," she said. "You will dismantle your military and surrender control of your conquered systems." Karvik stared at the screen, wounded but alive. "You could destroy us," he said slowly. "Yes," Alvarez replied. "Then why haven't you?" For the first time, something like emotion crossed her expression. "Because humanity knows what happens when hatred decides the future." She leaned forward slightly. "You killed our people on Lorian." Her voice dropped. "And we showed you exactly what humans can become when pushed too far." Silence filled the chamber. Then she finished, the sentence that would echo across the galaxy for centuries. "But unlike you, we know when to stop." The Dominion surrendered 2 hours later. The war ended. In the decades that followed, the galaxy would rebuild. Freed civilizations returned to their worlds. The former Vraxx Empire slowly transformed into something less violent, guided by strict interstellar treaties and humanity. Humanity became something else entirely, a species the galaxy would never underestimate again, because every civilization now understood a simple truth. Humans might look fragile, they might seem reckless, but, when pushed to war, they were the most dangerous creatures the stars had ever seen. Deadly. Deadly humans.